Have you ever felt stuck with old phone chargers? Throwing them away harms the environment, but keeping them feels completely useless? Using them is unreliable, charging on and off, sometimes even getting uncomfortably hot. You don't want to toss them out, yet leaving them around only fills your drawers with clutter. Over time, they turn into nothing but a quiet, annoying problem with no clear solution. Don't worry about that anymore, because I just came up with this idea. First, we'll carefully pry open the charger casing to remove the charging circuit inside. This circuit will be the core part, which will later connect with other important components to complete the setup. And help the charging circuit run more smoothly and last longer. I'll clean it thoroughly using WD-40 multi-purpose oil. Moving on to the next step, I prepared 2 electrical wires to solder and create the connection between the charging circuit and the signal receiving component. For those of you who might be new to DIY or soldering work, what I'm holding in my left hand here is a roll of solder wire. This is an essential tool when making electrical connections, as it helps create strong, clean joints and ensures good conductivity. When used properly, the solder melts evenly at the contact point, bonding the components together securely and reducing the risk of weak or unreliable connections. When it comes to soldering onto the contact points on this charging circuit, you need to be extra careful and pay close attention. Many of the solder points look quite similar, and connecting to the wrong one can cause the circuit to malfunction or even damage the components. Take your time, double-check the correct contact point, and work steadily to avoid unnecessary mistakes. To make it easier to route the wires out, I'll drill a small hole in the charger casing. Have you ever seen someone reuse an old CD as a signal receiving dish? It sounds hard to believe at first, right? I used to think the same way, but after researching and testing it myself, I realized this method is actually based on real scientific principles. In reality, a CD can help receive and direct signals thanks to its reflective metallic surface. This thin metal layer is capable of reflecting electromagnetic waves, working on the same basic principle as a satellite dish. When a signal reaches a CD, the surface helps concentrate and guide the waves toward a specific point where the signal receiver is placed. Although it's much smaller than a real dish, for simple DIY projects or experiments, a CD can still deliver surprisingly good results. And with this set of bolts and nuts prepared here, which fit perfectly into the two holes drilled on the CD's surface, I'll secure everything in place and get ready to connect the additional conversion component. With this copper wire in my hand, I'll intentionally shape and adjust it into a spiral form, similar to a spring, to create a proper conversion component. This spiral structure is a key advantage, as it increases the interaction area with the signal and enhances inductive reception compared to a straight wire. When the coils are evenly formed, the incoming signal becomes more stable, helping improve the overall performance of the system. As for the antenna base, it's actually quite simple. You can reuse almost anything you have on hand, as long as it fits your design and comes from thoughtful, calculated creativity. That said, no matter how creative you get, it's still important to meet basic standards, making sure the base is solid, stable, and reliable for long-term use. Although in modern times coaxial cables are no longer common in every household, I still need to introduce them to you, because they remain one of the most stable and reliable signal transmission cables available. With a copper core in the center, an insulating layer, and a shielding mesh to block interference, coaxial cables help reduce signal loss and unwanted noise. That's why, in signal-related DIY projects, they're still a very practical and trustworthy choice. In my hand here is a power socket, a very flexible and practical component that allows me to easily connect this homemade antenna to the TV in a clean and efficient way. With one straight F connector and one 90-degree F connector, like these, connecting the coaxial cable to the TV becomes much easier and more flexible, especially in tight spaces. Oh, and you want to keep the wiring neat behind the screen. One quick note: use electrical tape to cover all exposed connections, ensuring safety, preventing short circuits, and keeping the setup clean during use overall. Alright, everything is set. Now it's time to test it right away and see how it performs in real conditions. And just a few seconds after connecting, we can already see that the signal is working effectively. However, to be sure, I'll wait a bit longer to check whether the signal remains stable over time. After waiting for a while, there haven't been any negative signs at all. So I decided to unplug the connection and plug it back in again to make sure everything is working properly. And as you can see, after testing the setup several times, everything remains stable and the results are clearly visible. What's interesting here isn't just the improved signal, but the fact that we managed to reuse items that would normally be thrown away. A broken charger, an old CD, a few wires, and some thoughtful planning. When combined, they turn into something that actually works in real life. To me, DIY isn't about making things overly complex or impressive. It's about understanding the principle, doing things properly, and making good use of what you already have. Once you understand why something works, you stop relying so much on buying new things. And more importantly, you start to appreciate the satisfaction that comes from building something useful with your own hands. If you found this video helpful, take a moment to look around at the old items you have before throwing them away. With a bit of thoughtful creativity, you might come up with an idea that's even better than this one. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy practical DIY content like this, make sure to follow along so you don't miss the next ideas.